last week. It was a powerful show. I had Satori Seals on, and he and I we actually talked about transformation and the importance of your spiritual core and how to improve that in your life. So that was awesome in and of itself. But today we're going to talk about how we parent. And what sparked me to kind of want to talk about this is I had a gentleman that I coach, and he's a father, but he's not a single father, which is kind of ironic. But he's not a single father. He's actually married, and they have a daughter. And what he told me was that he does primarily the parenting through the day because his wife works during the day. He works at night, so he takes care of their daughter. They homeschool her. And what he told me was profound, and it made me kind of want to spark a conversation in this show today. He talked about how, his daughter's behavior really reflects kind of a spoiled, bratty behavior. And what he told me, which I thought was profound, he said it was very frustrating for him that his daughter's behavior was very, very, I don't know, if you will, very, just not a presence that the average person would want to, that will want to continue to be involved with their children. So what he told me was, he said that his daughter, her behavior was off the Richter scale, just wasn't in a good state. So I want to talk about this to you guys today about behavior. So with your children's behavior is a huge clue as to how you're parenting. Now, what we do with parents, don't we always ask our kids to see their report card and how are you doing in class and what's up with your progress report and did you get your homework done? And we do all that as parents, right? We want to check in, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing for their school and making sure that they're behaving properly in class. However, we really don't evaluate or check in on ourselves. Like, how is our progress with our children at home? So anyway, what I was saying is behaviorally, our children let us know how we are parenting. And why I say that is when you get home or when your child gets home from school, or if you're homeschooling your child and your child stays with you all day, and their behavior and your interaction with your child is toxic, is constantly bickering and complaining, you're constantly fussing and fighting with your child, you're not getting along, they're not doing as you ask them to do, they're not doing well in school. These are high marks that you are getting D's and F's in your parenting. And the reason I tell you that is D's and F's is not a bad thing. It just is something that you need to work towards getting a newfound way to how you're parenting your child. Now, the reason I say this is important is because a lot of times we just parent and we don't really step outside of our parenting to see how is it working. And I think each child is different. So let me put that out here also. If you have multiple children, multiple personalities, it's a challenge because you have to now know what type of parenting style is as effective for each child that you have. Sometimes you can get lucky and they pretty much, your parenting style pretty much works no matter what personality type you're dealing with in your home. But sometimes that is just not the case. You may have a child, and we love our kids, right? But we may have a child that our personalities clash. Or our personalities don't get along with each other. And so in order to parent a child that we have a hard time with understanding or coming up with a way to resolve how we're parenting, it can be challenging a lot of times. And I want you guys to understand, listen, it's not that you love your child any more or less. It's just that when you are trying to parent a child that you have a hard time getting along with, it makes it all the harder. And so I want to bring up about behavior because I think behavior is key. They're bickering, they're complaining, they don't want to do anything, they don't want to own their own responsibility on the things they're doing. They're criticizing you all the time about what you're not doing. There sometimes has to be someone to mediate for you. Sometimes you have to ask someone else, like, is there something I can do to fix this? Because a lot of times we'll parent and we're not even conscious that we are parenting to the best of our ability. But to the best of our ability doesn't excuse us from having to deal with our children and dealing with something that's toxic all the time. You should be in your home and it should be peaceful. You shouldn't have to yell, fuss, fight, and argue with your child every day. If that's the case, that's not healthy for you or the child. So there comes a point where we have to sit back and say, okay, is this parenting working? Is this working for me? Is this working for the child? And you can tell based upon how the child's behavior is. Now, here's the thing. We're supposed to be the guide to the child. We don't own our kids. So it's not an ownership, and sometimes I think as parents, we have this possessiveness when it comes to children. And we can't. We just have to get to the point where we step back out of that and say, I'm not trying to own my child. Let me just let them go on and make their mistakes, but at the same time help to guide them even when they make the mistake. So that's another challenge I think that we have a tendency to make a mistake with. Now, I have a course called Learn to Unlearn, and in my course I talk about how we learn to unlearn some things that maybe are not working effectively in life. That applies to this, especially. Because when we're trying to teach our children, sometimes we have to get out of the way of how we knew it worked for our last child or how it worked for our friend's child. We'll take what they did or how they did it and say, oh, that might work for mine, and find out it's not working. And the best way to pay attention to how it's not working is, again, the child's behavior and how you're flowing in your home when you are every day, like in the everyday balance. Is it that you're not getting along? Is it that your child is doing a lot of secrecy? They're trying to hide from you. They're not being upfront and honest. Because really, let me tell you something. As parents, when we have situations to where our children are trying to hide certain things, or they really don't want to tell us what's really going on in their life because they don't want to show that they've had some kind of, personality glitch going on, and they don't want to admit to anyone or themselves that they're making poor choices, then they just want to hide it from us. They want to make us think, oh, we're perfect, and they're not. So it's important that we do this. I think this is important. As a parent, it is okay to take a pause and say, you know what? When I step back and I'm looking at my home life, and I'm looking at how I'm parenting my child. And this can be anytime. It doesn't matter. If you're a parent forever. So even if your child is out on their own, if they're grown or young, and you're still hands-on and nursing them, it doesn't matter what stage as a parent. Still step outside of it and say, am I still parenting, and the parenting is still effective? Is it still working, or is it not? Because I think sometimes it's hard for us to really sit back and say, oh, wait a minute. My child is doing this and my child is doing that, but I'm demanding them or commanding them to do this, and they're not listening and they're doing it their way. And now I have an issue because now I'm burdened with the fact they're not doing it the way I told them to do it. And now I'm going to demand them to do it this way. And, we can't even control our animals, let alone our kids or our mate or anything else. So we cannot get systematically just confined and firm on only wanting to see it our way. We have to look at self as a parent. It's very important, and I don't care what stage we're at. Stop, look at your parenting, and see, is it effective?